Today, we're going to be talking about how to survive a government shutdown and make sure that you're not one of these knuckleheads lined up outside of a food pantry who can't eat. I made a post on Instagram about this and I got a ton of backlash. And so I just want to preface with this. Not only was I an enlisted Marine E137 for 13 years on active duty, but I spent 5 of those as a command financial specialist. And I did not grow up from money. I learned about money while I was in the military. And now I spend all of my free time helping service members and veterans improve their financial situation, find financial freedom, and make the best of what they're given. I've helped a lot of people do this. I know this stuff works. I've been where you are, and I want to help you avoid it going forward. The very first piece here is credit. Now, I would not say this should be your first line of defense, but if you have a credit card or a line of credit, now that could be a business line of credit, a unsecured line of credit, a home equity line of credit on your home, any sort of line of credit with an institution you can use, and then credit cards, i.e. you have a $5,000 limit and you don't have $5,000 spent on it, so you can access them and swipe the card. Not saying this should be your first move, but at least having a credit card open does 2 things. One, it allows you to start building credit, right, to improve your score, provided that you pay the balance off, you don't keep a rolling balance and pay a ton on interest, and you actually use it correctly and don't have a high balance on it. This will help you with your credit. And 2, it allows you to swipe the card if you're not going to get paid for a couple weeks, knowing that when you get paid that back pay, you can pay the card back off, no harm, no foul, and you'll most likely not even pay $1 in interest. So that's fine, but you have to be responsible if you're going to be using credit. If you're going to do this, definitely prioritize your needs, right? Food, housing, utilities, the things that actually matter, not necessarily the nice to haves, you know, your Starbucks coffee, your beer, your cigar, your bourbon, your whatever, right? Like feeding the family, housing, utilities, electric and water at the house, those kinds of things are to be prioritized over the rest. A nice thing about cards like this is if there's a government shutdown or some kind of hardship and you call your creditor, they will most likely work with you on interest, balance stuff, you know, whatever, to make this a less than painful situation for you, especially if you have a good history with them. I almost guarantee you that they'll work with you to make sure that they can help you out through this tough time. So go ahead and communicate with them consistently and ahead of time before you start making moves with your card to set yourself up for success. And I would 100% avoid things like payday loans. Talk to like your Relief Society on base, you know, maybe Navy Federal or USAA. Some of these military friendly banks will work with you on loans or 0% interest, and don't bite off more than you can chew. And let's say you got a $10,000 0% interest from Navy Federal, you know, and you only use 2,000 of it. Then take the other 8,000 from that loan and pay the loan back off. Don't put yourself in a hole. Okay, the second piece here is actually what got me in all kinds of hot water on that Instagram post, which was basically saying, look, dudes, if you don't have an emergency fund, you're doing this to yourself. Because, and I got a whole bunch of comments on there that were, I'll read through some of them at the end, but they're just saying that I was an insensitive essentially. And let me say this, while I served, there were 3 government shutdowns. All 3 of those, I was able to afford to feed my family. And no, I was not some bajillionaire. I was a sergeant for the first one, and then I was a staff sergeant for the second and third. I had a family, I was not loaded, and I had just done a little bit of foundational work to take care of myself, and that's not crazy hard. So look, if you don't have an emergency fund, set aside $20, $50 a month. You know, maybe $100 would actually get you there faster, but set aside a little bit of money every paycheck and just put it into a high yield savings account or a savings account that you don't touch, and get to where you have $1,000, $2,000. Ideally, bare minimum, 1 month's total expenses for you. I'd like to see 3 to 6 months, but 1 month, bare freaking minimum, 1 month gets you through any and all government shutdowns we've had in the last 20 years. None of them lasted longer than that. And in all of them, really, service members kind of got paid anyway, except for like maybe the Coast Guard for a little bit, rare exception. And then you get back pay, so it doesn't matter. So you just need to be able to weather that one storm to survive this situation. That said, 3 to 6 months is ideal and really ultimately sets you up for success in a good way. And just put away a little bit of money. And I know there were people on the comments on that video who were talking about how, well, if you just join the military, look, you're at boot camp, at recruit training, you don't spend any money that first 3 months. And so if you just took that money and put it into a high yield savings account, didn't blow it on a tattoo or whatever when you get out of boot camp, there's your emergency fund for at least the first month or 2. And now you're starting from a place of good rather than like from a deficit, right? And I would definitely automate these transfers, right? So that you know the money's going in there. And a lot of this goes back to basic principles in budgeting, right? You should definitely set yourself up for success by budgeting, knowing where your money is going and all of that, and then having an emergency fund. And I will drop a link in the show notes to an episode we did on what I call the financial freedom plan, but essentially the 9 steps to setting yourself up successfully for your financial foundation. It's a video on YouTube. I'll drop a link in the show notes so you can go check that out. It's a really good spot for just getting started with your financials. The third one here, and this kind of makes me cringe, but the thrift savings plan, taking out a loan on your TSP. And I'm not a huge fan of this from just an objective perspective, but it works. You can take out up to 50% of your balance or $50,000, whichever one is the lower amount. So if you have 50 grand in your TSP, you could take out 25, not the full 50, but if you had 100 grand in your TSP, you could take out 50, right? And you can use that for housing, but you can use it for personal needs. You're going to have to repay it. You're going to have to repay it at whatever the G fund interest rate is back into your account. But the problem with this, and the reason I don't like this, is you're losing out on opportunity cost. So if the stock market continues to go up, as it historically has over time, while you're paying that down, you're losing out on all of those potential gains while you're paying back at a much smaller interest rate. Now, sure, if the market turns down, you could actually theoretically win, but we're getting into the game of timing the market, which I fundamentally do not believe in when it comes to financials. And I would not recommend you base your strategy on that. So, take it for what it's worth. I would definitely not take out a TSP loan unless you absolutely had to. It can, however, cover your butt. So this is one of the reasons I'm always touting putting 10 to 20% of your money, if not more, into that thrift savings plan, because it's just an additional way that this can ultimately help get you out of a bind, right? And so I would recommend that you don't use your TSP loan unless you absolutely have to. But if you do have to, it is a definite nice to have over taking out crazy debt from other organizations. And I wouldn't suggest you take out more than you absolutely need in this scenario. So don't go taking $50,000 out if you need 5. The fourth point here, and this is more of a preparedness one for like by the time next year rolls around, that's house hacking. And I've got a million videos of this on the channel, but essentially buying a duplex, triplex, fourplex with your VA loan, living in one unit, renting the others, or buying a 4+ bedroom house, renting out all of the rooms to roommates while you live in it. In either of these scenarios, you can eliminate, or at least very much mitigate, your largest expense, which is housing. Across the board in the US, 33% of people's income on average goes to housing, 35% if you're a tenant. And that's a lot of money, right? That's several $1,000s a month in most cases that's going to housing. And if you can eliminate that expense by house hacking, then now you've got, call it $1,000, $2,000 a month that you get to save month in, month out towards reinvesting, towards your emergency fund. Like this single move can absolutely set you up for success. So go check out the playlist on my YouTube channel about house hacking. I've got tons of videos on this, or I'll drop a link down below where you can register for my weekly training where I teach people how to do this for free, right? It's just a 60-minute, 70-minute presentation with some Q&A at the end. And sometimes we hop on a Zoom call and hang out for a bit afterwards. And I will teach you everything you need to know to get started in this strategy. I'm not going to charge you any money to be on the call. I'm not going to ask you for money on the call. And it's just very valuable information. My hope to help you do this and eliminate that expense so you can save all of this money and go spend that money and invest that money elsewhere to set yourself up for success. And that one move, I promise you, can turn this entire thing around to where you're never, ever, ever worried about a government shutdown. I promise you, I've seen it 100 times. Know all of your resources. Know all of your resources. Navy Federal, USA, they often do like 0% loans. A lot of banks do 0% loans. You've got Army, Navy, Air Force, all these relief societies that will help you out with this issue if you get into a really rough spot. You've got local organizations that will help. There's stuff on base. Hell, you could just eat at the damn chow hall. I don't know why people don't like doing that, but go eat at the chow hall. It's even if it's not free because you're not on, you're not doing the single barracks thing. It's cheaper than eating out in town. Go to the commissary, shop for groceries and simply eat at home rather than going out for dinner. And they're right there. You saved a bunch of money. And if you're in a pinch, that's a good way to shave your expenses. And then, worst case scenario, you've got food banks or base family centers and a lot of other opportunities that'll come up to help make sure you're taken care of, and or friends and family that are probably willing to step in. There's no shame in asking for a little bit of help. However, I will say, there is shame in asking for a little bit of help, then not changing your financial situation and doing it again in 2 years when there's another shutdown. Just set yourself up for success. Use this as a learning curve, improve your financial situation, and get to a spot where You don't have to ask again. And in fact, the next time around, you can extend help to somebody else. That should be the goal. And look, at the end of the day, control what you can control. There's this whole serenity prayer, which is like, God grant me the strength to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So basically, don't freak out about the things you can't control. You can't control Congress, the government, and all these decisions being made politically or publicly with or without you being involved. You can, however, 100% and absolutely take control of your finances, right? And so if you know where your money's going, you track it, you expense it, you budget correctly, then a lot of these issues can become non-issues for the next time around, which is really beneficial to you. And honestly, if you're in kind of a tough spot, run this as an exercise. Like, see how little you can spend in a week. Be incredibly frugal. Challenge yourself. Make a no spending or whatever challenge, and see what you're capable of, and run it as a field exercise. Just test the limits of how frugal you can be, and then after this month, find a balance to that where you can be a little bit closer to the frugal side to save more money to ensure this never happens to you again. All right, so in a nutshell, your government shutdown strategy going forward, right? Audit your expenses and budget accordingly. So go through everything you spent in the last 30 to 90 days and see where you're spending money. You will be surprised at how much probably goes to, going out, food, maybe alcohol, expenditures that are not necessities, but wants. And if you just cut a little bit of that back and put some of that money into a savings account and automate that, right? Like, oh man, I got $200 a month I could save. We'll just set up a $200 allotment to your savings account that goes out the day you get paid, 100, maybe 100 each paycheck. Set it up, throw it out, do the thing, and you live on that. You'll save money very quickly. And you're not having to change your lifestyle a ton to just say, you know what, instead of going out 3 nights a week, I go out 2. Or instead of eating out 5 nights a week, I cook 2 nights a week and go out 3 nights a week. Like you'll save a significant amount of money if you're smart about this. Absolutely create an emergency fund. Have an emergency fund. Set yourself up for success. Bare minimum 1 month, recommended 3 to 6 months. Any more than that is, bonus, but you could be investing the difference. But have an emergency fund for situations like this that arise, because that's a lot better than relying on credit and food banks. And then have some unused credit sources, like have credit cards, lines of credit, whatever, where you can access the funds if you need it. Even to this day, right? Like I run a significant amount of my business on credit cards, but I have the cash in reserve. I just like the points. But then I have a $50,000 line of credit that's zeroed and has been for over a year. I haven't had $1 spent on it in over a year that I don't think so. Maybe a little bit more than a year. And I have that. So if all the world goes to crap and I got to take out some money, I've got 50 grand I can write a check for that I don't use, and therefore I don't pay interest on it. It costs me like $500 a year in fees, sure, but I have it as a nest egg, as an ultimate oopsie doopsie, whoopsie daisy emergency fund, and it'll cover my butt, which is very, very, very powerful. Use the DFAC and other base related opportunities to save money. Use what resources the base allows you to save money when stuff gets tight. And yeah, sure, go out to food banks, whatever, take care of yourself. But again, take this as a learning experience to improve your finances. I would then say eliminate your housing expense, which is your largest expense, by house hacking, which I would absolutely recommend that you all do anyway. And as an absolute worst case scenario, TSP loans are there. I don't recommend them, but they do the thing. And I will tell you, I'm giving them all this hate. I have used TSP loans during a divorce before, and they definitely bailed me out. I really wish I hadn't used them, and it did cost me some money, but it worked. Oh, and just to get rid of some of the naysayers, and before you say I can't, or I'm attacking you, or the victim, these are some of the most common comments I saw on this Instagram post. If you didn't see it, on my Instagram, I made a post that was basically service members, don't be the victim. And I even said, I'm not saying you're playing the victim. In this scenario, you are the victim of other people's decisions to pay or not pay you. But you don't want to be in that situation. You want to take control of it so that you can set yourself up for success, and you can have a say in whether or not you're going to be able to survive or weather any of these storms. And in order to do that, you should have an emergency fund. You should prepare. You should do better. You should whatever. And I'm just going to read some of the main comments and feedback I got that were some of this was very, very, very negative, and a lot of it was even attacking me, even though it wasn't a political post. I even said in the caption, this isn't political. If you're going to make this political, please just don't. This is about the financial habits. But one of the most common ones was people saying service members work 12 plus hours a week. You don't know what they go through. I will say, most of those profiles, as I clicked on them, did not look like they'd ever served in the military at all. So, maybe they did, but who knows? So I will say this. Most service members do not work 12 hours a day. Sorry, it was 12 hours a day, not 12 hours a week. No. If you're in the field or on a deployment, sure. But if you're in the field or on a deployment, you're saving like 90% of your income while you're there. And I've got videos on combat zone tax exemptions and investment strategies. So go watch that. But if you're in the field or you're deploying or whatever all the time, like, yeah, in that scenario, you're working a ton. You're also saving most of your income and should absolutely have an emergency fund and some cash because you're saving. You're not spending, you're eating MREs. Like, you're not spending that money when you're, you know what I mean? Most service members are not working 12 hours a day. And as a guy who did 3 years on recruiting duty and did work 12 hours a day, plus pre-deployment training, Mojave Viper, Afghanistan for a year, all the things, I've been in that realm of working all those hours. And I can tell you, it wasn't the norm during the normal day-to-day. So the picture that's painted of service members always working 12 hours a day, like, that's just, it's not usually the case. Now, there are some incidences, depending on what your job is, where that might be the case. And if so, you probably have a really good opportunity to save a ton of money. So this video probably doesn't even apply to you. I saw a lot of comments about how poorly the military pays, and people even saying the 90%, whatever percentage of the military operates below the poverty threshold. I hate all these perpetuated rumors. If you don't understand how your pay and allowances work, just say that. I've got videos on it. Go do your research. But your W-2 salary is not how much you get paid. Your pay includes your basic allowance for housing, your basic allowance for sustenance, your healthcare, your dental, your medical dental, your life insurance, your college tuition, like all the other things that you would need to be compensated for in cash to live the exact same lifestyle you're currently living. And if you think that the 40K or 45K, 50K you're getting W-2 tax makes you below the poverty level, try doing that without all of your benefits. That makes you below the poverty level. So don't play the victim here, because yes, we get paid less on W-2 on paper because that allows you to pay less in taxes than if you actually got compensated for all of the benefits you have. Like, if you got the $100,000 worth of total pay and benefits tossed into your salary, you'd pay an extra 10 grand in freaking taxes, at least 5 grand, probably 10 or more in taxes, because you'd be in a higher tax bracket. You'd be having an extra $50,000, $60,000 of taxable income. You'd be in a higher tax bracket for that part, and it's not pretty. So instead of wishing and crying and whatever and believing all the hype, learn how your pay works and understand that it is structured in a way that benefits you from a tax perspective, so you save more of your income while still getting all the benefits and compensation. It really is. Military pay is wonderful. It is set up to make you successful. And yeah, on paper it might look a little bit less, but don't go running around talking about how you're less than poverty level. Because as an E5 in the military, you're doing just freaking fine. And as an E1 in the military, you're still doing just fine, given all the benefits package for a unskilled laborer in their first day on the job. And also, I'll tell you that I did all this, like started building my wealth and my portfolio while I was active duty. So yes, you can absolutely do all this while you're in the military. And again, I was a command financial specialist, so I've seen and know all of the things, pay and benefits. So like, I'm qualified to talk on this. Another big one I got was, I have a family and the military doesn't pay you enough. So basically the same comment, but I have a family. Well, okay, first off, the family was a decision. And I'm not saying you shouldn't get married or shouldn't have kids, but it's kind of irresponsible if you've got 6 kids and you couldn't afford 2, if that makes sense. So like, let's put our big boy pants on and take a little bit of responsibility for the fact that you did the thing. And if you married into 6 kids, that's an even more of a take some responsibility here. Like, you know these things. This is not, you're not the victim. I mean, now I will say there's probably one person in the military who had, 6 kids in one go. Okay, got it. That was unexpected. Right? So like, hats off if you're the one person on this video. But if you're not that person who had, 4, 5, 6 kids in a single go, then it was, I'm not saying premeditated, but like, you guys knew what you were doing, right? Like, after 3 kids, if you didn't want any more, you can get for free in the military, right? And so again, no shame on the family side, but that is a decision. So let's not play the victim side here. Now, on the other side of that, I had me, my wife, and 2 boys, who right now one turned 17, so he would have been 13 when I left the service, and one is 8, so he would have been 4 when I left the service. So at the time I left the service, I had a 13 and 4-year-old boy and a wife, and I was still saving enough money to become financially free because I was making good decisions. Now, yes, my spouse did work during some of that time. Again, a choice whether or not to work. I know there are some things in there about how hard it can be to get a job. In fact, I will say that part of the time I was married, we did not have a job for my spouse because she could not find a job in her career field. So I get all of that. And even when she wasn't in that situation, we were a single income, 4-family household, even during that time, we were still able to save a little bit of money and be a little bit better. Now, was it less than when I, if I was single, sure, but not enough that it justifies crying, like screaming about your situation. Like, again, we're focusing on the things we can control, right? Like if you have a family of 6 and your wife doesn't work, there are things that we can do. We can get another job if things are that tight, or we can budget very well, or we can invest a little bit, squirrel it away, take a side hustle. Like, again, not always fun. And I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not trying to discredit anyone who's got a little bit of a struggle there, but I choose to empower service members and vets. And so if you want me to just say like, there, it's hard, you're right. Go buy the $200 bottle of bourbon because, you deserve it. Your life is difficult, or whatever you're spending your money on. Like, I guarantee you that if I was to go through your budget with you, we could find you a little bit of money, right? So if you're going to come on here and you're going to play the victim card, I get it. It's not always easy. But if you want me to go through and play Caleb Hammer with you and go through your finances, we'll find you a little bit of cash, or I'll tell you some hard truths that help you point yourself in the right direction. So that's on you. If you want it, let's have that conversation. I'm open to it, as long as we make some podcast content out of it, because it'll be fun. And I mean, it'll be beneficial to you. It'll be done in good taste, right? I'm not here to yell and screw anyone. I got a lot of comments about this not being the time to shame people, and I would argue that it's absolutely the time to shame people, although I'm not shaming anybody. But look, in my experience, and people know this across the board, you don't change until the pain of not changing is worse than the pain of changing. So you're not going to start going to the gym until being out of shape is more painful than going to the gym. That's just how humans operate, right? In this case, you're not going to start squirreling away money into an emergency fund until not having done that puts enough pain and stress in your life that you're like, oh, I should do that. So this is exactly the right time. Also, like I said, I served during 3 government shutdowns. During all of those, and after all of those, and before all of those, and within all the other time in between, because I've done 1,300 videos on YouTube, I have been preaching to the choir about emergency funds and basic financial fundamentals. So it should come as no surprise that I'm still preaching about basic financial fundamentals and setting yourself up for success. And if it hurts and you take it personally that I'm pointing and saying, let's do this and fix this, take a good look in the mirror before you come attack me in the comments. Take some freaking big boy pants, extreme ownership, personal responsibility, whatever you want to call it. And let's fix the situation so that in 3 years, there's a government shutdown and you can just put your middle finger up and then be like, Dave, that sucked, but thanks, man. No worries now. I'm sleeping well. That's where I want you at. Be a little frustrated at me. Then fix the thing, come back in 3 years and tell me it's not better. That's what we want. And I got a ton of comments about how people come from nothing and I don't know their backgrounds. Look, I didn't grow up with a silver spoon. Now, there are definitely people in this country and in this world worse off than me. Now, I would say if we go world, there are 95% of people in this world are worse off than any single person watching this video. So no matter how rough your situation is in the United States, you are in the top 10% worldwide. So now if we go into the country and we want to play about who got better, worse, whatever, like I didn't come from a silver spoon. I came from a family where, hand-me-downs and off-brand, and you didn't order a root beer at lunch, you got water, and we didn't get appetizers, and we didn't eat out much. And we never had a lot of money. I mean, I came up on, my parents lived on support, right? They ran as support they worked for an organization called Family Life, helping people with, they ran these marriage conferences across the world. Weekend to Remember, they just retired last year, and no, this is no shade to them. Like, we were fine. We were comfortable. Everything was good, but we weren't well off. Right? They lived on support, like donations from people. You don't make a ton of money working on donations. And so again, not to discredit anybody's struggles, but once you enter the military, it's basically level playing field. Like, just get rid of the debt and you're good now. So you might be coming in with some debt, but again, the SCRA benefits will help you with that. And I got videos on that, but just don't allow yourself to play in your head the victim. Empower yourself. Give yourself the power to make a change. Focus on what you can change. Take control of what you can change and improve your financial situation. Now, if you're watching this and you're still here, please subscribe to learn more tips and tricks about financial freedom, education, house hacking, all the things I mentioned. And, click the links down below in the show notes. Get connected on all of our platforms. Join our free Facebook group. We are here to help you out, right? I want to help service members and vets. Our goal is 10,000 service members and vets achieve financial freedom by 2035. All right. So I'd love for you to be one of those.